Hello and welcome back, my fine feathered speak up friends. Hope everything is going well for you. Today I'm going to talk to you about the second part of chapter 5, which is all about the 6 abuses of language. And these are humor, euphemism, slang, libel/slander, which is counted as 1 in the textbook, profanity, and hate speech. And I will discuss each of these very, very briefly and ask you to answer a few questions below about these. The first is humor, and this is what surprises many people. Humor can be seen as an abuse of language. Now, this is to be clear, humor is not inherently an abuse of language. Some of these others are inherent abuses, but this is not. What that means is language can be abused through humor, but it is not definitely abused through humor. Humor that is at the expense of others, that hurts people, that is demeaning to groups or individuals, would be the kind of humor that is an abuse of language. But it is not automatically. So, for example, here's a joke. There are 2 muffins sitting in an oven. One muffin says to the other muffin, "Boy, it's really hot in here." The other muffin says, "Holy cow, a talking muffin." I know, it's really funny. I'll let you pause for a moment so that you can laugh. So as you can see, this piece of humor, first of all, might not be humorous to everybody, although I don't know who it wouldn't be humorous to. But second of all, doesn't demean or hurt anybody in any way, unless, of course, you're a talking muffin, in which case I think you probably shouldn't be in this class. So humor is only demeaning if you tell jokes or use humor that is going to hurt other people in some way. The second form of abuse is euphemism. Euphemism is also not an automatically bad thing. A euphemism is also known as using a word to replace another word to make it sound less extreme. For example, I could say, "I am going to go use the toilet to get rid of all of the waste that's in my body so that it no longer bothers me." Or I could just say, "I'm going to use the restroom." In reality, the restroom is another word for bathroom or toilet, but it is a more graceful way of saying it that perhaps wouldn't offend people by being so explicit and specific about what you're doing. That's not a bad case of euphemism. I think I would rather hear you say restroom than to be specific about what you're going to use the bathroom for. There are some cases where euphemism can be dangerous, though. For example, one euphemistic word is friendly fire, which is often used to replace the term for when one soldier kills another soldier when they happen to be on the same side of a war or a battle or a conflict. Friendly fire sounds like not such a bad thing. Friendly fire! That doesn't sound so bad, but in reality, friendly fire is quite bad. And when we use euphemism, then we are lessening the meaning of the words in some way. So it's really important to be careful of using euphemism and to not to use it in ways that are going to lessen the impact of the words themselves. The use of slang is also not inherently a bad thing. Slang can be good, slang can be bad. If you're talking amongst a whole lot of friends who happen to share the same culture as you, using slang makes sense. If you are a gamer, for example, you're probably going to say, "I totally pwned that guy when I fragged him and I got 5 achievement points." I don't know what any of that means, but I bet gamers know it, and gamers should use slang around other gamers. Slang becomes dangerous, though, when you start using slang in front of people that don't understand it, and all of a sudden you're practically talking a foreign language, and you should really be careful about speaking in ways that people are not going to fully understand. Libel and slander, unlike the first 3, is an inherently bad thing. Slander is spoken, libel is written, and this is when you knowingly say or write something about somebody that you know is not true. Obviously, libel and slander are big abuses of language and, in fact, can be illegal. You can be sued in the United States for libeling or slandering somebody if you knew that it was true. In other countries, it's actually, you can be sent to prison for it. In the United States, it's really just a civil problem. The next issue we have is profanity. Profanity is not inherently a bad thing. In fact, in some circumstances, using profanity is perfectly acceptable. In some circumstances, it's not acceptable. It really just depends on what the circumstance is. For example, I might use profanity around my very close friends because that's just how we talk. but I probably wouldn't use profanity around my coworkers or my students, or if I went to church and was talking to some of my fellow churchgoers, I probably wouldn't use swear words there either. So profanity really has to deal with the situation you're in. Profanity also changes. For example, 20 years ago, saying damn was a bad thing. You could barely say that on network television, but nowadays you can say much worse than damn on network television, and it's not considered quite as bad. So it really depends on context a lot of the time as well. The final type of abusive language is called hate speech. Hate speech is one of those like libel and slander, which is always bad. Hate speech is a type of profanity where you use words to put down a group of people. Hate speech usually deals with race, religion, culture, sexuality, gender, all of these things where people are in groups, and by saying one negative thing about that group, you are using what could be considered hate speech. And it's something to be very, very careful of, which is why I want us to be very careful when we use language. Because even though you might not consider something hate speech, somebody else might. And that's, some people might say, well, that's just being politically correct. Personally, I think that's just being sensitive to how you use language around others. Because just like you have words you probably don't want to describe you, other people have words they don't want to describe them. And that's something we should at least be aware of and be very careful about the words we use. So if you are using a word that is going to offend other people, at least you're doing it knowingly and that you're not doing it by accident. That's something to be aware of. So to recap, there are 6 abuses of language: humor, euphemism, slang, libel and slander, profanity, and hate speech. That's all I have for you for today. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Bye-bye.